Always lift and support the trailer per manufacturer's recommendations. Always lift the trailer by the frame and never by the axle or suspension components, as they are not designed or rated for the dead weight point of contact loads that the trailer frame is. Do not go under the trailer unless it is properly supported. To avoid injury, be sure to wear the proper protective equipment. Next, you will need to loosen and remove the lug nuts holding the tire in place. Save these as you will need them later. When using an impact to remove lug nuts, ensure the socket has come to a complete stop prior to moving on to the next lug nut, so as not to round off the corners of that lug nut. Once the lug nuts are removed, remove the tire from the hub assembly and place off to the side. With the dust cap exposed, slowly rotate the dust cap and use a flathead screwdriver to pry it free. With the dust cap removed, the castle nut and cotter pin will be exposed. Using a pair of needle nose pliers, straighten the cotter pin and pull it free. You may need to work at this for a few if the cotter pin does not come out smoothly. Once the cotter pin is removed, it may be discarded, as a new one should be used during reassembly. With the cotter pin removed, you can now remove the castle nut by hand. Be sure to wear appropriate PPE during this portion so that we do not contaminate the brake assembly or inner portion of the new hub with grease as we proceed. Once the castle nut is removed, remove the washer from the spindle. Next, remove the hub from the spindle. Ensure that your hand is over the opening to prevent the outer bearing from falling out. With the hub assembly removed, your braking components are now exposed. As mentioned before, use appropriate PPE to prevent grease from contaminating any of these components, as it could cause braking troubles down the road. Inspect surfaces to ensure that no grease has contaminated them. Thoroughly clean off any remaining grease from the spindle. During this time, again, be careful not to get any grease from the spindle onto any of the braking components, including the magnet below the spindle. Next, place the new hub assembly onto the brake assembly. Then install the outer bearing and washer. Next, you will need to replace your castle nut. Place the castle nut onto the spindle and tighten it down by hand. Next, grab a torque wrench set to 55 foot-pounds and tighten down the castle nut until you feel a click or a pop. Torquing down the castle nut will have set the bearings on the inside. Now, back the castle nut off, and then retighten by hand. Once the castle nut is hand tight, place in a new cotter pin. Bend the cotter pin in a Y shape, preventing the castle nut from backing off. Reinstall the dust cap by placing it over the hole and tapping firmly into place with a rubber mallet. Roll your tire back into place. Line the holes up with the lug nut studs and remount your tire. Once the wheel has been remounted, grab your lug nuts from where you stored them and replace them all by hand. Continue to hand tighten the wheel lug nuts to help prevent cross-threading when you use your impact. Next, retighten your lug nuts following a star-shaped pattern to ensure that the tire is properly mounted. Just like when taking lug nuts off, ensure that the socket on your impact is not still spinning when trying to reinsert on the lug nuts. Next, you will once again want to lift the chassis up off the jack stands. Once the jack stands are free, remove them and lower the frame back down. With the tires back on the ground, grab a torque wrench and tighten each lug nut down to the recommended torque specs found in the service manual. Tighten your lug nuts in the same star pattern you used to tighten them down with your impact. Check and retorque your wheel lug nuts after 10, 25, and 50 miles, and check periodically during regular service.